As we ask you, did you get an explanation for your tech? What happened in that?
I just yelled at him to call it, and obviously it was a pretty quick technical, but whatever.
That was the moment everybody was waiting for, because Caitlin Clark finally addressed the technical, and she did not sound like somebody planning to change.
So Caitlin Clark has broken her silence in regards to receiving a technical foul after the play involving Jonquel Jones. Now, we know Caitlin Clark is possibly on the verge of being fined and maybe even suspended over the WNBA policy. And I'm here to tell you, she didn't hold anything back, man. She spoke about what she said to him, and it's good to see her.
Right away, that is the tension around this whole story. This is not just about one whistle, one reaction, or one quick technical foul. This is about Caitlin Clark being close to the danger zone, the fever starting to look dangerous again, and the league once again having a situation where the conversation after the game is not only about basketball. Because on the court, Indiana is rolling. They just beat Seattle in a wild game, then turned around and handled New York. That should be the headline. The Fever offense is starting to flow. Kelsey Mitchell is cooking. Clark is creating advantages. Stephanie White is talking about defensive consistency, and the team suddenly looks like it might be figuring out the exact version of itself that can scare people in the playoffs. But instead, one fast technical put a different question over everything. Does Caitlin Clark need to pull back emotionally to protect herself from a suspension? Or is the league asking the wrong person to adjust, and stay with this, because the part that matters later is not just what Clark said about the technical. It is what Stephanie White said about defense, rotations, and which players are earning trust, because that is where you see whether Indiana is actually building a playoff team or just surviving drama night after night.
Playing back to back.
Feel good? Feel great?
Good.
Yep.
Random question about your shoes, purple version. How much input do you have on like the colorways? I know you went like the design, but like, is the colorway also a lot of hands on?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sitting there picking every color, especially when there's going to be a lot of different colorways. So like, about every color you can come up with, there's probably going to be a shoe for it. But I mean, we go back and forth, and you know, obviously this like has like a little more of like a gradient finish to it, and like doing different things like that. And but I have a good amount of say. Like if I really don't like the color, I'll get rid of it. But at the same time, like not everybody needs to like the same colors as me, and I want people to find a color or, you know, whatever it is that they feel comfortable in or makes them. So there'll be options for everybody.
What's been your favorite color so far?
So far, I really like the all white. Those are pretty fire. But
now, this part sounds lighter, but it is actually part of a bigger conversation around Caitlin Clark right now. The shoes, the colorways, the purple version, the questions about whether she is sending some message through what she wears, all of that has become its own side story. And Clark did something interesting there. She did not feed the conspiracy, but she also did not act like she has no involvement. She said she has a good amount of say. She said if she really does not like a color, she can get rid of it. She said she wants there to be options for everybody. And when asked which color she likes so far, she gave the all-white pair love. Then admitted the purple ones are not bad. That matters because, with Clark, people read everything. A jersey color becomes a message, a facial expression becomes a report, a bench reaction becomes a locker room crisis. A shoe color becomes a clue about her future. And that is the strange part of being the biggest draw in the league. Even when she is answering a simple sneaker question, fans are searching for something underneath it, but the smarter way to read that clip is this: Clark is becoming more comfortable owning the business side without over-explaining herself. She knows the cameras are on her. She knows every answer is going to be clipped. And she still gives enough personality to keep people talking without handing them a full headline. That is a skill. And it is one the league desperately needs her to have, because the business around Caitlin Clark is not separate from the basketball anymore. The shoes, the sellout crowds, the ratings, the road arenas, the media attention, the defensive attention, the technical fouls, it is all connected. The question is whether the league can handle the monster it helped create.
She was very uncomfortable with the praise and accolades that she was getting after the game. What do you think that is about her that she doesn't care about that stuff?
yeah, I feel like she's just somebody that like puts her head down and works. And, you know, she was in this league for a while and probably never really got a lot of that. And, like, it's just kind of her nature just to continue to work, put her head down, keep grinding it now. Like, she's able to play the best basketball of her career and do it in front of a lot of people. And, you know, I feel like everybody across the league knows how talented she is. And as her teammate, it makes it really fun to get to watch it up close every single day. Like, you know, she makes the game of basketball look really easy a lot of the times. And she obviously makes our lives a lot easier, too, when she's able to perform like that and do it in such a consistent manner. So it's really fun, but she's just such a humble individual, very like soft-spoken, and yeah.
She's a very serious in-game player. So
yeah.
She cracks a smile after an and one. Three.
Yeah.
Does that give you a lift in any way?
Yeah, it's just cute. Like, I don't know if she's ever like maybe surprised by what she does, but like even that three, I think she was like almost probably a little surprised that it went in. It was just one of those plays where it's like, dang, like it's one of those nights where you're really feeling it, you're really in the zone, and to finish through contact that was pretty fun. And I actually had probably the best view of it because I was kind of trailing right behind her, so it was pretty.
That answer about Kelsey Mitchell is important because this is where the Fever story starts getting bigger than Clark alone. Clark is asked about Mitchell being humble while playing some of the best basketball of her career, and she immediately gives her teammate credit. She talks about Kelsey putting her head down, working, staying humble, and finally getting to play in front of a much bigger audience. That is not just nice teammate talk. That is a real basketball point because, if Indiana becomes dangerous, it will not be because Caitlin Clark scores 40 every night. That is not sustainable, and it is not how playoff defenses worked at IT will be because Clark bends the defense so hard that Mitchell gets cleaner attacks, Aliyah Boston gets better touches, the role players cut into space, and Indiana stops needing one miracle performance to stay alive. Mitchell is the perfect example. She can create her own shot, she can punish late rotations, and, when she is hot, she changes the entire geometry of the floor. Clark even says Mitchell makes basketball look easy. That is exactly what Indiana needs beside her because, when defenses trap Clark, blitz Clark, shade two bodies toward Clark, or try to take the ball out of her hands, somebody else has to turn that pressure into points, and this is also why the praise matters emotionally. For years, Kelsey Mitchell was talented in a league that was not giving her the spotlight she has now. Now, with Clark on the roster, the building is louder, the games are bigger, and more casual viewers are finally seeing what Fever fans already knew, but there is another layer. Clark is also sending a message without making it dramatic. She is saying this team is not a one-player show. She is saying Mitchell deserves respect. She is saying the Fever ceiling depends on everybody, not just the player who gets the most cameras. That is a smart answer from a player who knows every quote can become a controversy.
As we asked you, did you get an explanation for your tech? What happened in that?
I just yelled at him to call it, and obviously it was a pretty quick technical, but whatever.
Now we come back to the line everybody is going to clip. She had the seal, she thought the call should have been made, and then the technical came pretty quick. That is Caitlin Clark's version of the story. Not a 20-minute rant, not a meltdown, not some dramatic attack on the officials. Just a short answer that basically says, I thought there was a missed call, I reacted, and the technical came fast. And this is where the debate splits in two. One side is going to say Clark has to be smarter. She knows she is close to a suspension threshold. She knows the officials are watching her reactions. She knows clapping, arguing, or showing up a referee can turn into a technical quickly, especially when she already has a reputation for visible frustration. From that perspective, it does not matter whether she was right about the missed call. The job is to stay available, but the other side is going to say the league keeps putting her in impossible spots. If defenders are allowed to bump, grab, ride, shove, and screen through contact, and then the reaction gets punished faster than the original contact, fans are going to see that as backwards. That is not even only a Clark issue. Stars across basketball complain when physicality is allowed one way, and emotion is punished the other way. The difference is Clark's reactions become national debates, and that is why this technical matters, not because one tech changes a season by itself, but because the next one might. If she gets closer to a one-game suspension, now every whistle becomes a storyline. Every hard screen becomes bait. Every no call becomes a test of whether Clark can keep her hands down, keep her face calm, and not give officials an easy decision. That is a dangerous place for the Fever to be, especially when they are finally building momentum.
Do you need to change any of your approach to the game because you are so close to the suspension?
No.
New teammates here doing the signing. What do these moments mean to you every year?
They're really special. I mean, look, yes, basketball is what we do, but everything that we do is bigger than basketball. And the ability to impact community, the ability to give young people an opportunity to experience things that they might not be able to experience, and to really bring joy is.
Stephanie White takes the conversation in a completely different direction here. She is talking about community, kids, impact, and the fact, music, that basketball is bigger than basketball. And that is not just coach speak. That is the part people sometimes miss when they talk about Clark like she is only a stat line or only a controversy machine. These Fever games have become events. Young fans are showing up. Families are planning around these games. Road arenas are changing. Players who spent years fighting for visibility are now performing in front of crowds that look and sound different than they did before. That is why the technical debate feels bigger than one call, because Clark is not just another guard picking up a tech in a random July game. She is one of the main engines driving attention to the league, and that means every league decision around her gets magnified. If the officials let too much contact go, the public sees the league failing to protect its biggest draw. If the officials call every reaction, critics say Clark needs special treatment emotionally. If the league steps in too harshly, it risks suspending one of the players people are paying to see. If it does nothing, the debate keeps growing. That is the trap, and Stephanie White understands the human side of that. She knows this is entertainment, business, community, and competition all at once. She also knows her team cannot live in that noise every night. At some point, the Fever have to be a basketball team, not a daily referendum on what Caitlin Clark means to the WNBA. But that only works if the basketball is strong enough to overpower the controversy.
Anything different defensively against the Warriors when I reported Seattle?
Yeah, the second half. I mean, look, it's not anything that's new, or it's just building consistency in it. Activity level, attention to detail, rotations, being in the right position to start, having each other's back. I mean, it's not anything that's out of the ordinary. It's just building consistency in it and being willing to do it for 40 minutes.
Is the way that the game is officiated one way or the other, either really tight or really loose, does that kind of impact how physical they're able to play, or kind of the way that they defend on the floor maybe?
Yeah, I mean, it can. I think any team is going to go as far as you let them. Certainly, when you think about what that line is, that it certainly will be. But I think for us, I think it starts with our mindset. Look, we can score. Like we know we can score. But in order to accomplish what we want to accomplish, we've got to continue to get better on the defensive end. Now we're better today than we were, earlier in the season. We're better today than we were yesterday. We were better against New York than we were against Seattle. But we got to string.
This is where the real playoff conversation begins. Stephanie White says the defensive improvement is not some magical new thing. It is activity level, attention to detail, rotations, being in the right position, and having each other's back. That sounds basic, but for Indiana, that is everything. Everybody knows they can score. Clark can pass people open from places most guards do not even look. Mitchell can explode for points in a hurry. Boston can punish switches and create stability inside. The Fever can play fast. They can make threes, and, when the ball is popping, they can make good teams look uncomfortable. But offense is not the question anymore. Defense is. White basically says it herself. If Indiana wants to accomplish what it wants to accomplish, it has to keep improving on that end, not for one quarter, not for a 5-minute burst, not only when the crowd is loud. Larger chunks of the game. That phrase matters, larger chunks of the game. That is the difference between a fun team and a real postseason problem. A fun team gets hot, wins a shootout, and gives you viral clips. A real playoff team strings together stops when the game gets ugly. A real playoff team survives when shots stop falling. A real playoff team rotates on time, finishes possessions, and does not need Clark to create a highlight every trip just to keep the building alive, and this is why the Liberty game matters. Beating New York is not automatically proof that Indiana is a title favorite, but it is proof that the Fever can punch up when their defensive energy matches their offensive talent. It is proof that the formula exists. The question is whether they can repeat it when the opponent adjusts, when the whistle tightens, when the game slows down, and when the playoff pressure turns every mistake into a run.
Caitlin's been lobbying to be off from minutes restrictions seemingly for the past 3-4 games. Do you anticipate her to be off?
I have no idea. It's one day at a time.
With Myisha, there's some games she plays, some games she doesn't. What does it say about her to still stay professional and give a positive impact when she is in the game?
She's a pro. I mean, she's a pro. She's a veteran. She's won a championship. She understands different roles. She understands the importance of staying ready so you don't have to get ready. And she was huge for us.
Now listen to how White talks about Myisha Hines Allen. One day at a time. Staying professional. Staying ready. Understanding roles. Championship experience. That is not the flashiest part of the press conference, but it might be one of the most revealing because, when a team starts winning, everybody talks about the stars. But when a team starts becoming serious, the rotation decisions get uncomfortable, players move in and out. Minutes change. A veteran sits for a while, then suddenly becomes important again. A rookie earns trust. Somebody who was playing early in the year disappears from the rotation. Somebody who looked like an afterthought becomes a closing option. That is what happens when a coaching staff stops experimenting and starts hunting for reliable playoff combinations. White praising Hines Allen tells you she values professionalism as much as production. A veteran who can handle changing roles is extremely valuable on a team with young stars, loud attention, and constant outside pressure. Because not every player handles that cleanly. Some players need rhythm. Some need guaranteed minutes. Some struggle when they are not sure when their number is coming. But White is saying Hines Allen stayed ready. And when Indiana needed her, she helped. That matters because the Fever season is not just about the top of the roster. It is about whether the players outside the headlines can survive the moment. When Clark sits, can the offense stay organized? When Boston is unavailable or limited, can the front court hold up? When Mitchell is in foul trouble or cooling off, who carries a possession? When the whistle gets weird, who stays composed? The stars raise the ceiling. The pros protect the floor. And, in a playoff series, that floor might be the difference between a close loss and a series-changing win.
Wednesday to keep the momentum going into the All-Star break.
Yeah, we got to be locked in. I mean, we got to be locked in. We got to stay locked in. You know, it's about us, and it's about our journey. Certainly reminding our players that we're not on All-Star break until after that game. Making sure that we stay locked in, and it starts with our prep today.
How Monique's looks playing the five, with how well KK's been playing, does that open the door potentially for some lineup changes or to move some pieces around, shift some pieces on the deck?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about lineup changes specifically. I think rotational adjustments based on, opponent, based on who's hot at the time. I mean, I think you've seen it in minutes and longer stretches of minutes, whichever ones are hot are the ones that we're going to roll with. I think a prime example, KK has been playing great basketball. Got an opportunity to be inserted into the starting lineup, was ready, continued to build, and Mai was out of the rotation for a little while, and then we needed Mai to get back into the rotation, and she was ready. So, that's part of being a pro. And I think it's part of our journey of consistency. But KK is a young player that we knew had an opportunity to develop, and she's really continuing to grow. And
this is the part that should make Fever fans pay attention because Stephanie White is telling you exactly how she is thinking about the rotation. She says they have to stay locked in. They are not on break until after the next game. She talks about rotational adjustments based on opponent and based on who is hot. She points to KK getting inserted into the starting lineup and being ready. She mentions Myisha being out of the rotation, then coming back when needed. And she says KK is continuing to grow and getting more minutes because of it, that is a coach telling the locker room nothing is guaranteed. And honestly, that is probably what Indiana needs. Earlier in the year, every Fever rotation question felt like a crisis. Why is Clark sitting now? Why is this lineup on the floor? Why is Boston not getting the ball? Why is the offense stagnant? Why did the bench minutes swing the game? It felt like every substitution carried a whole argument behind it. Now the tone is different. White is not promising a fixed lineup. She is saying the Fever are going to roll with the players who are working. That can be frustrating for fans who want one perfect rotation written in stone. But, in a long season, and especially with injuries and matchups, that flexibility matters. The key is communication. That if players know why their minutes are changing, they can handle it better. If they feel blindsided, resentment builds. White brings that up with Raven, too. She talks about conversations, experience, and readiness. And this ties directly back to Clark's technical situation. The Fever cannot afford to let emotional swings control the team. They need structure. They need roles. They need players who can come in cold and defend, cut, screen, rebound, and not hijack the offense. They need a team identity strong enough that one bad whistle does not crack the whole night. Because, if Indiana wants to be more than a highlight team, this is the boring work that has to happen behind the scenes.
Rotations, obviously as a rookie, how have you just seen her take that as a pro?
Yeah, she's been great. I mean, look, I think that when you come from a place like South Carolina, you've sort of been developed as a pro. And she understands that, being able to have those conversations. I mean, certainly we knew with Ty's experience, once she got healthy, it was going to be, it's going to be whichever one of them is rolling at the time, and just making sure that we communicate that. And I think with Raven, though, her ability to impact the game, with her energy and
Raven Johnson is another piece of that bigger puzzle. She has been in and out of the rotation, but White praises her attitude and says coming from South Carolina means she has already been developed like a pro. That is a specific kind of compliment. It is not just Raven is talented. It is Raven understands how to function in a winning environment. She knows how to practice, she knows how to stay ready. She knows the game can ask different things from her on different nights. And White specifically mentions energy and defense as the way Raven can impact a game no matter what. For a young player, that is the path to minutes on a team with bigger names. You may not get 10 shots. You may not get the ball in your hands. You may not have a play called for you. But if you defend, pressure the ball, bring energy, and do not break the structure, the coach can trust you. That is what Indiana needs from the bottom of the rotation, but it also creates a bigger question about the roster. If Raven's path is defense and energy, KK's path is athleticism and versatility, Myisha's path is veteran readiness, and Mitchell and Clark carry offensive creation, then what is Indiana still missing? That is the question that will not go away. They have star power. They have scoring. They have a crowd advantage almost everywhere. They have a coach who is clearly trying to raise the defensive standard. But do they have enough size, enough wing defense, enough reliable two-way depth to deal with the most physical teams in the league? Because, once the playoffs come, teams do not just guard your first option. They hunt your weakest link. They force the ball to the player they want shooting. They put your least physical defender into actions. They test whether your young players can make decisions under pressure. Raven being ready matters. KK growing matters. But Indiana still has to find the best 8 or 9 players it can trust when every possession is heavy.
On KK, she's just naturally so jumpy and eager as a player. How have you seen her kind of reel that in with discipline in this improved stretch?
Yeah, I mean, I think just having an awareness of what we need from her. I think she's become a really good off-ball cutter. I think she's become a really good screener. At times, a year ago, understanding when to do those things wasn't quite there. It's really come together. She understands her role. She doesn't try to play outside of herself. She gives us a different look from a post perspective on the defensive end with her athleticism, with her versatility, ability to guard multiple positions, with her fast twitch, movement patterns, ability to get out and get back.
This KK section might be the real hidden key in the whole press conference. White calls her a good off-ball cutter, a good screener, someone who understands her role, someone who does not try to play outside herself, and someone who gives Indiana a different defensive look because of her athleticism and versatility. That is exactly the type of role player who can make Caitlin Clark's life easier without needing the ball. People always talk about surrounding Clark with shooters. And yes, spacing matters, but cutting matters, too. Screening matters, timing matters. If Clark draws two defenders and the weak side just stands there, the possession can die. But, if a player cuts behind the defense at the right time, suddenly Clark's passing becomes even more dangerous. That is why KK's growth matters. She is not just putting up numbers. She is learning how to fit inside the ecosystem, and defensively, White's words are even more important: athleticism, versatility, guarding multiple positions, fast twitch movement, getting out and getting back. Those are playoff traits. Indiana has enough players who can score. What they need are players who can erase mistakes, switch a possession, recover after a bad closeout, and keep a run from turning into an avalanche. This is where the Fever's ceiling starts to change. If KK becomes a trustworthy rotation piece that gives White another body who can play fast, defend space, and survive against better athletes, if Myisha gives veteran stability, Raven gives pressure and energy, and KK gives athletic defensive range, then Indiana suddenly has more ways to win than just out-shooting people. That does not mean the Fever are finished products. They are not. But it does mean the team is developing real answers to problems that used to look fatal. And that is why the Clark technical conversation, while important, cannot be the only thing people take from this day. The more interesting story is that Indiana may be growing up right as the schedule is asking them to prove it.
In that same vein, how valuable is it to have a player like her, because of the athleticism, to still make you right, even if you don't have the exact rotation or something like that?
Oh, it's huge. It's huge. We talk a lot about being able to play through mistakes, but when you got a player like her who can make up ground, who has the ability to take cover for her teammates. I think that block in Phoenix was a prime example of that.
This is the payoff. White says having a player who can cover for teammates is huge, and she points to a block as an example. Then she says something that should stick with everybody. They do not have a lot of players like that. That is the honest evaluation. Indiana has talent, but it does not have endless defensive erasers. It does not have unlimited size and length at every position. It does not have the luxury of 5 switchable stoppers who can clean up mistakes all night. So, when a player shows the ability to make up ground, cover for teammates, and turn a bad possession into a stop, that player becomes valuable fast, and this brings us back to the question hanging over the Fever. What kind of team are they trying to become before the games matter most? If they are just a scoring team, they are dangerous, but beatable. If they are a scoring team that can defend in stretches, they can win big regular season games. But, if they become a scoring team with enough defensive answers to survive the ugly parts, then nobody wants to see them. That is why the Liberty win mattered. That is why the Storm game mattered. That is why Clark's technical matters. That is why Mitchell's humility matters. That is why KK's development matters. None of these are separate stories. They are all pieces of the same question: is Indiana becoming a real threat, or are they still one emotional moment, one bad whistle, one cold stretch, or one defensive matchup away from falling apart? Right now, the honest answer is both. They are dangerous, and they are still fragile. They are improving, and they are still figuring it out. Clark is playing with fire emotionally, but she is also responding to a level of contact and scrutiny that few players in the league experience at that scale. Stephanie White is demanding defensive growth, but she is also still sorting through which combinations she can actually trust. The Fever are beating good teams, but the standard they are chasing is not one good week. It is consistency when everyone in the arena knows what they want to do, and that is why the next stretch is so important. If Clark picks up another technical and has to sit, the conversation changes overnight. If the defense regresses, the Liberty win starts looking like a flash. If the role players keep growing, Indiana's playoff ceiling changes. If Mitchell keeps playing at this level, teams cannot sell out on Clark the same way. If White keeps finding lineups that defend without killing spacing, the Fever become a much harder matchup. So, the force a choice question is simple. Do you think Caitlin Clark needs to calm down before the league makes an example out of her, or do you think the officials need to stop punishing the reaction faster than the contact? Drop your answer in the comments, hit like if you want more Fever breakdowns like this, then subscribe because this story is not slowing down.